Welcome to part two of our inside of DVDs that I own as part of my collection. And if you've seen much like our first part, we're going to be just randomly picking out movies that I own on DVD that me and him have both seen, or if one of us has seen and stuff like that, and just give our random thoughts on it. Consider of various DVDs I own here. So as we left off, I talked about Hot Fuzz, and now it's his turn.
All right, one of my favorite Farrelly Brothers films I like to talk about is There's Something About Mary. This film, I remember when it first came out, this was a big deal. And I will tell you right now, this film is fucking hilarious. It's one of my, I would say easily my top 20 favorite comedy movies of all time.
Yeah,
and this movie follows Ben Stiller, and basically some funny events happen tragically when he gets with the hottest girl in school, Mary, played by Cameron Diaz. Can't think of her name. Anyways, 20 years later, they've all moved on. Everybody's pretty much went their separate ways, and he still can't get over her, and he wants to look her up. That's when he sends Matt Dillon's character to go. He's a private investigator to go find her when he hears that she was relocated in Miami, and basically the whole story is about him getting with her. And I'll tell you right now, this was fucking hilarious. Ben Stiller was great in it. It's one of my favorite films of his, other than To Meet the Parents. I would say this is still probably above that. I love this movie. Matt, I will tell you who I personally thought was the step up in this film was actually Matt Dillon. He was fucking up. Man, he was funny as shit in this movie. And he ends up being the guy going down there. Then he ends up she's like the type of girl it's like love at first sight. So like every man in this film is lying about their success because she likes a man who's rich and sophisticated and is, she's real picky about her men. So they kind of work themselves around what she likes to, and Ben Stiller ends up going down there, finds out that his private investigator he hires is in love with her, and then other guys are in love with her, and it ends up all crumbling down because every man is lying to her about who they really are. And this was a good comedy. This was fucking hilarious. I don't think I would say that it's overrated, underrated, anything. I think everybody's pretty much says they agree. This was hilarious. I like the part where Matt Dillon is sitting there. He gives us one of the best fuck lines whenever the dude starts, because they all go. Because later in the film, when all the men find out about each other, they start kind of exposing each other to Mary when they had the time. And Matt Dillon's sitting out there reading a paper, and he hears that one dude saying, "Yeah, he's not really an architect." And he's like, "Fuck!" And that part where he has little binoculars looking at her tits. And he needed the bigger ones. He goes up and it's the fucking old lady with big old tan tits. Man, this is just a good comedy. I could rewatch this a lot. So, There's Something About Mary. That's a good movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it.
Yeah, me too, man. It's definitely one of my favorite Farrelly Brothers films, and it was the film that really put the Farrelly Brothers on so successful comedies that came out, because they had Dumb and Dumber, and they had the Kingpin. But this was the film that brought him into a huge success overnight.
When it came to Dumb and Dumber and all those were acclaimed by audiences like us and stuff. But that one was when they really hit.
It hit critics, basically.
Critics, too.
And it just holds up as one of the most best romantic comedies of all time. And this is, to me, was at a high point where romantic comedies can still have a good spin on it, and still, while it's derivative of how it plays out, it still plays it out in a very fun way.
Yeah, I would say that when it comes to romantic comedies, everything after that ended up being inferior. They just pretty much have a formula. That one ended up doing so much with it that I still think that it is the best romantic comedy ever made. That part also with the cop things, where the cops showed up and they looked like it was a blowjob set orgy thing going on, and Ben still happened to be pissing there. Then he had the dude from Rocket Man in his car,
Harlan Williams,
and he was a fucking serial killer. And the way that they did the comedy, I enjoy. This is I love how the comedy really works. Is the part where he's in the police station, he's sitting there discussing. He thinks he's being arrested for being at the orgy thing or peeing in public, and they're sitting there with the whole different idea that you murdered because that guy put a dead body in the back of his trunk.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Who's this dead body?" and stuff. Like he doesn't know what they're talking about. He thinks that he got arrested for letting a hitcher get in his car.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yes, I've done it a million times," not realizing he's admitting to murder. Like he's a serial killer, and that fucking cop beats his ass. You sick son of a bitch.
Right.
I mean, the way that they blend the comedies, it works so well in that movie. So
yeah, I agree. It's definitely in my top 3 Fairley Brothers movies of all time.
Yeah.
So yeah, now I'm going to get to a movie that it is definitely considered by many to be a most hated comedy, and I understand a lot of people don't like it, and I understand when it came out, it was definitely kind of put a hit on a certain actor's career and also another actor's career. I'm sorry, but I can't get enough of this movie. I actually really enjoy Nothing But Trouble. This is a film that, to me, I think it was the last, like, as far as, like, other than the Vacation series, the last great comedy I enjoyed, well, last good comedy I liked with Chevy Chase, and him,
I would say...
Well,
Hot Tub.
Well, but for a while
yeah.
before he got to Hot Time Machine, as far as like main leading guy.
Yeah.
As far as main leading guy, besides Vegas Vacation, I think this was the last one I enjoyed from Chevy Chase, and this was also directed by Dan Aykroyd, who's also in the film in 2 roles, and it's a weird comedy to describe because it's basically if you took Texas Chainsaw Massacre and turned that into a comedy essentially, but in a weird bizarre way that kind of works because it's a film that...
It's one of those films, if you sat there and never heard of it, and you put it on and you were smoking, getting pretty high and stoned off your mind, and as deep as the film gets into it, you're like, what the fuck am I watching?
Right.
It is, like, not in a bad way, like, it's a trippy fucking movie. There's some just crazy shit that happens in this for a comedy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and also just the production design. I gotta admit that this movie has some really great like gothic values. The stuff that they put into the house and like the overall like atmosphere of it really is a very creative. I liked that Dan Aykroyd was able to make it like this whole kind of like gothic look and stuff, and kind of make it like.
I think what they were trying to go with, which kind of resembles a little bit, was kind of like a whole like. Transylvania type thing, like Rocky Horror Picture.
Yeah.
The boyfriend and the girlfriend show up.
Yeah.
At that
well, because Chevy Chase and Demi Moore, they play these people that are on this way to, I think it's in New Jersey or somewhere, or I think what it is, or wherever they're going. They end up getting stopped by John Candy's character, who's a cop working for the Dan Aykroyd's house that he's at, and. Because Dan Aykroyd plays the judge, and so they get stopped because he ran a stop sign. Chevy Chase did, and they go there, and I gotta admit that the prosthetics they used for Dan Aykroyd for this to make him look really old was pretty good. And also, he cracks me up in almost every scene he's in because of the way he speaks and stuff. And there's actually a part where and then they realize that the people that when they get there, they have no way of getting out of that situation empty-handed, so they end up having to stay there, and they're basically trapped. And while they're there, they go into this dinner scene, which I gotta admit still holds up. It's funny as shit. And there's a whole part where Chevy Chase is looking at because they're eating hot dogs, and he sees Dan Aykroyd eating a hot dog, and all of a sudden his nose turns into a fucking penis.
yeah, there's some funny shit that the movie is pretty funny, and I will say that prosthetics were real like. The amount of money they put on practical effects and the way these things like them fat motherfucking babies,
which is one of them is played by Dan Aykroyd,
and them things were creepy as fuck. It does give you that really creepy vibe, like you're in some shit, but it keeps the comedy as its #1 goal. So it is. It does come off like kind of like a situation that's disturbing.
Yeah, it's a dark comedy that is not quite as what people would probably really expected when it came out, and. It was a flop that came out, and it didn't make really anything. And to this day, it hasn't been released on any other format, surprisingly. So,
and it's really hated a lot by critics and
audiences. But I still think that for what the amount that they put into it and everything, I still thought it was definitely one of my all-time underrated films of the '90s. So.
Exactly, I agree with you on that one. My next film is a film that I remember when it first came out. It was a big deal. A lot of people liked it, and over the years, especially as of lately, they did another contest, and that's whenever people on Facebook do these contests where they introduce like an actor or actress or director or whatever, and they go by choose the movie, like I said with Cable Guy, and you pick the movie of that person's career, and if you pick that first movie, you want to eliminate it first, hinting it's the worst of that actor's career. This one surprisingly shocked me because I thought people loved it, but apparently a lot of people don't like it. And this is one of my favorite childhood films. Not the favorite. It's up there as one of my growing up films, and to this day, I think it's actually the best of the other types of storylines they've done with this, and that is Hook with Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman. I will tell you right now, I absolutely love this movie, and to this day, I think it's the best Peter Pan film. I actually like it better than Peter Pan itself. I don't know what it is. Peter Pan and all them, I'll respect the classic of Peter Pan, and lately they've tried to readapt it, and they have not been that good.
Like with Pan?
Bringing it back with Pan and stuff. But I don't get the hatred for this. Robin Williams was fucking amazing as a grown-up. I liked how they did the twist. Instead of just doing your traditional, let's get a kid, let's play Peter Pan, doing the stuff. It's about a guy who is Peter Pan, who forgot about Neverland, and bringing the adult back into everything he's forgotten and put him back in that setting of, what he grew up to forget. And there's a lot of good stuff with that themes. It's well written, great chemistry with him and the kids, the Lost Boys. Yes, the Lost Boys. I thought it's got memorable lines in this film. Dustin Hoffman was great as Captain Hook. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I don't get the hatred for it. Really, I don't. I thought this was a good childhood film, and it will always have heart to me. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's one of those films that to me to this day, I agree. It's in my top 3 favorite '90s films of Robin Williams that I go to, along with Mrs. Doubtfire and Jumanji.
I just feel like they put a lot of heart in it.
They did, but it was great because it was basically what we got with a few years ago when we got with Christopher Robin with the whole grown-up version, going back to child and stuff.
Yeah.
This really worked well with Hook because it was basically showing that Peter Pan still had a childhood he can go back to. Yeah. It was very heartwarming. It had a great score also by John Williams, especially that one of the most touching parts that kind of makes me kind of be on the edge of tears is the part where his daughter is Peter Pan's daughter is on that scene where she's singing on the ship. Yeah. And she's singing that one song, and the pirates are all in awe of it. It's just Spielberg's direction. It really holds a lot of great whimsical moments, and I actually admit that it feels like you're on also kind of an amusement park type of feel because the locations. I mean, even though it's on set a lot of the time with the locations and stuff, it still gives you that vibe of that whole adventure type.
It feels very like you're reading a bookish. That's why I love how the settings were.
Yeah.
A lot of people complain that the settings look fake and all that. I felt like it's almost reminiscent of somebody reading a book and how a book setting would look, visualing the setting. I love the setting in that film. I thought that...
right, because it's all it's not like on locations. It's all in an actual studio set, but it still really feels magical.
You can tell it feels magical though. But the thing I really liked about that, going back to emotional scenes, I really liked the part where he's he's slowly bonding with the Lost Boys.
Yes.
And that one little boy comes up to him, and they all try to touch him, and they see Peter Pan deep in him.
Yeah, he's like, "There you are, Peter."
Yeah, I love that. It is really heartwarming. The kids were so good in this film. I love the grandmother, played by Margaret. I forgot her name. She's a famous British actress.
Wasn't she in Professor McGonagall in Harry Potter?
Yeah, in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But she played the Wendy but she grew old.
Maggie Smith, I think.
Yeah, Maggie Smith. I said Margaret. Yeah, Maggie Smith. But she plays I think Wendy.
The old version.
The old version of Wendy, and I just liked everything about the movie, and it's something I can watch more than once.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, especially, and if
and like I said, going back to when somebody did the Spielberg list and they did the Robin Williams list, this was voted off first.
I know.
Second, well,
it's definitely one that really I feel on my go-to as far as fantasy type movies like this too.
Exactly.
So. Fair enough. Now, my next one I'm going to get to is a film that to this day holds as one of the most realistic and most compelling bank robbery films of all time. That's going to be Heat.
Yes.
Michael Mann's magnum opus right here. Now,
Yes.
I haven't seen much of his other films. I've seen Manhunter. I've seen
Manhunter was good.
Manhunter was good, and then you also had Miami Vice, which we'll get to here later on. But as far as like movies that I go to, as far as Michael Mann, this is my most go-to.
This is Michael Mann's Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Of his career.
This is a film that not only the novelty of seeing Al Pacino and Robert De Niro for the first time on screen was a great thing, even though they're only in like 2 scenes together.
Yeah.
It still was a very hard-edged, cop film and bank robbery film that puts it in a realistic setting because you see both sides in the film. You see the also not only the cop sides but also the bank robber sides, and because they all have their own purpose to what they're doing,
and they all make sense.
Yeah,
that's where it leaves you kind of divided of whose side you're really on. Which side do you pick?
Yeah,
and not only that, it has fucking ensemble cast. Yeah. I mean, just even cameos. I mean, I couldn't believe the amount of people that was in this movie. There are a shit ton.
Yeah,
and yeah, it is basically a critically acclaimed fucking heist movie, and easily one of the top 10 best heist films ever made.
Yeah, it's also a remake of a.
And Val Kilmer was awesome.
Yeah, he was too, and he was the one besides Robert De Niro's character that you kind of felt for the most because he was one that was trying to really. You're really interested on how it's going to go across because he's dealing with his personal thing going on with Ashley Judd and things like that. So you really feel for the characters the way that Michael Mann puts you in this environment, and it has, like we were saying earlier, one of the best shootout scenes ever made on film, especially when it gets that bank robbery scene and they're having that shootout in the streets. There's no music, and it's basically the equivalent of watching a documentary type of feel of it. Because the shootouts are not only intense, but they're also timed right, and the sound is, depending on what you hear it on, if you got a surround sound, you want to hear on the best volume, on the best.
I believe it also had a lot of twists going on.
It did. Yeah. It had a lot to do also with that other story involving with that guy that was around the beginning where he's a serial killer, and Robert De Niro has to basically decide whether or not he's wanting to leave the life or actually get revenge, and that becomes basically a morality that I really appreciate what they went with.
Exactly.
And what also was great is that the diner scene alone makes the fucking movie. When you're seeing Al Pacino and Robert De Niro having that whole conversation about life and stuff, you get the feeling of both sides of them.
Yeah.
And the dialogue is not only great, but also this is probably like my top 5 best performances for both actors in this film.
Exactly. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I was glad to see them both reunited in The Irishman that came out last year.
Yep.
Now I have seen the other one they were in called Righteous Kill, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, other than the novelty of seeing them back. But this will be my always go-to for them, unless I want to watch more of them at The Irishman.
I think we can all, critics and audience, can agree that it's fucking amazing movie.
Yeah. So.
All right, I know I butchered this guy's name. You butchered it in the last video. Can't say his name. Antoine Fuqua. Fuqua. This is one of my favorite films he's ever done, and this is Training Day with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke. This is, I believe, the year it came out was 2001, and I believe this ended up being my favorite 2001 film, surprisingly, or at least in my top 2 or 3. But I loved this. I love this movie. Like, you would not believe the amount of times I can keep going back and watch this. I love the atmosphere of L.A. This captured L.A. in a perfect format. And I loved seeing Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke's, chemistry, where Denzel's like the villain who's in debt with Russians, and he's got his own crooked cop shit going on. Ethan Hawke came from a smaller town to get more action in the bigger city, and he's in over his head because obviously he's going to be dealing with more dangerous shit. And he takes him on the ride on training him the whole day, one long day of the life of LA, and they captured it very well in this film. And there's some, not only is the visual effects still fucking hold up from this to this day, It's also one of my favorite Denzel performances because he is just menacing in this movie.
Yeah.
And he's scary in the sense that he can sell you out and fucking get you killed and not give a fucking shit in the world. And it really digs more deeper into, in my opinion, happens in real life with cops, where you get the scene at the diner scene where all the cops talk about, doing crooked shit, setting people up and all that stuff. Not to mention, I also had a funny line where they're talking about the peanut butter joke.
Yeah.
Where the one where the dude wiped his ass peanut butter and got the insanity plea. But there's some, other than that like small thing, I will say that it's brutal. It's like, with the whole Crips and Bloods thing, it seems so real, like 90s. Because it was just fresh out of the 90s. I mean, 2001, but still, it feels very 90s. I love the story, and I love the payoff. It was fucking, damn, did he take a lot of bullets.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I love this movie. This is definitely up there as one of the best from the director and Denzel Washington. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. This is if I want to go for straight, like, badass, but also, like, really, like, corrupt cop type of movies with Denzel Washington, I'll go to that one every day. Because that's out of the performances, I will say that is actually my favorite performance of him. Yeah. And that Oscar, he really deserved for it.
Oh, yeah, he deserved.
Yeah.
Because he
won it, too.
The way he could flip from being your friend to enemy to sucking you in and bring you into this environment of corruption, and then Ethan Hawke is sitting there, he knows, like, if he doesn't act and do what they do, he'll die. They'll set him up to fuck him up and they'll kill him. And he learns that when all the police chiefs and all the fucking leaders are all in on the fucking thing.
Yeah.
On the crookedness. And he knows he's in a game, stuck in a world where he can't control. But he still has his morality still there. But he sees shit and he's like, this is wrong. This is so fucking wrong.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, with the movie, not only is it gritty as hell, and the cinematography still holds up to this day that we've seen in countless other cop movies, especially Den of Thieves, which was kind of similar to Heat on its own.
Yeah.
But anyway, that whole LA setting that they use and everything is just, it's great. And also, Ethan Hawke.
Don't it kind of remind you with the setting? Doesn't it kind of feel like the closest you ever get to San Andreas?
Pretty much, yeah, because it's set in LA. Yeah.
Well, the LA has always been used many times very well in films, but I felt like they really dug deep into that.
Yeah, it's the closest we would probably ever get to doing a Grand Theft Auto San Andreas type movie. Yeah. And what I also appreciate with Ethan Hawke's character was that he's basically what the audience represents, because throughout the whole movie, Denzel Washington's Alonzo Harris is telling him to do stuff that he doesn't, to do, and what does he do? He does the exact opposite. So every advice that he gives to him, he completely disregards, and it does it for a good cause, because if he was to take any of his advice, it would have got him into trouble.
Yeah, going from, and what really disturbed me the most is the part where we learned that Anton he's friends with this one guy, and the guy is ready to settle off into the sunset with all his money, and Anton is, the whole premise is Anton is Alonzo, I keep going, Anton, Alonzo. But yeah, Alonzo, he pretty much is in debt with the Russians, so pretty much he is running out of options how to get his money to pay them off, and pretty much, even though that's his good friend, he just offs him in the most fucking creepiest fucking way, because he's just watching him slowly die.
Well, because
he's like, breathe, come on, breathe. And this dude's got 10 holes in his fucking chest, and he's smiling. And it's like, man, this motherfucker is. Yeah. You see him deteriorate as the movie goes, and Ethan Hawke being forced to do drugs and shit. He knows he shouldn't be doing half the shit.
That's what I'm saying.
He's setting him up so whenever that guy was to go and fucking tell on him, you got drugs in your system. You were part of that robbery. Fuck you. You can't go to nobody.
Exactly.
So I like that whole story. You can dig deep and notice it's well written.
It is, definitely. So
yeah.
Fair enough. And then we get to another film that, to this day, is a film that if I'm going for pure, if I want something different as far as, psychological thriller that I can go to all the time with, I'm going to go with The Machinist.
Yes.
This is a film that when it came out, I didn't really know much about it, and it wasn't until about years later, back in like 2010, I think, or 2011, when I finally got a chance to watch it, and I only knew about it because they talked about how Christian Bale lost a huge amount of fucking weight to lose for this role, and it shows because he plays a guy in this film that is basically has not slept in over a year, and essentially it deals with themes of guilt, and it deals themes of regret, and just this whole psychological feel where he's starting to see things that are out of the ordinary and whether it's real or not.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, man, this is, when it comes to performances, this is up there as one of my favorites of Christian Bale.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most like.
Christian Bale is the type of guy who does put his body to work.
He does.
Yeah.
And it's made by the same director that did that one we called Fractured that came out last year. And this director really shows a lot of what it's like to be in, kind of your question about things that are whether they're real or not, and whether the person's like losing their mind or if it's dealing with something else. Because throughout the film, Christian Bale is seeing a guy that supposedly works with them. That's at this mechanic shop, this machinist shop that he works at, or a factory that he works at, and it's debatable whether or not the guy is basically a real or not, it plays on your psychological level on that, and it really works, and it's an all around, like, it's haunting, and in the end it really pays off with a very twist ending that I won't reveal, but it really is fucked up.
Yeah, it's got a hell of a twist ending, and I agree with you. His performance. Can't deny what he put his body through for that film. I mean,
and
he weighed a mere 90 pounds for this role, kind of indicating, slowly deteriorating, druggy type look to him, roughneck, machinist type guy who's hadn't slept, and you just see the bags under his eyes. I wonder if he purposely didn't sleep to make this movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you call method acting, because essentially the next year, he literally had to get in shape the next year to play Batman. So this movie's coming out, he's starting to work out for the role.
Only to have to re-put himself in that same predicament for the fighter.
For the fighter, yeah. Because he lost a shitload of weight in that one, too.
To play a crackhead.
And what's a fun fact is that his name in the film is Trevor Reznor. It's basically a play on, if you know the lead singer of Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor, that's basically what the name is kind of similar to. And so I thought it was a nice little fun fact on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I highly recommend this film a lot.
Okay. Now this is going to be a film that will probably be closest to me more than any film ever. Up there, at least in the top 10 ever. And I grew up on this movie, and it will always be one of my favorite films of all time. One of my favorite films of all time. And this is The Goonies. I love this movie. I don't think you will find a person that says they hate it. You just can't. And this is a fucking... It was directed by that Richard Donner.
Yeah.
And it was... Spielberg presented it. He, I think, produced it and stuff. Yeah. And, should I tell the synopsis, really? It's about kids living, trying to save they're all being forced to move out. They want to turn their neighborhood into a golf course, and their father doesn't have the money, none of their fathers and parents have the money, and then they learn about this gold being hidden, and they go on this kind of like quest to find this mysterious ship that has gold of One Eye Willie, and basically it's a friendship movie. It's about friends who dreamed of wanting to do something like this and end up making it a reality. And on top of that, they're doing something good by saving, their neighborhood from being used as a fucking golf course. And great performances. I mean, these kids were perfectly chosen. And I loved how this movie will, I saw a reunion the other day. Like a couple months ago, they did a reunion where everybody came back. And it was neat seeing all of them back together again, and there's been hints that they would do a sequel. Honestly, they can't capture what they did with this, and I was glad to hear that they said that in that interview, that they probably ain't gonna do a sequel because they can't capture what they did with this. So, but anyways, yeah, what can I say? Great performances by everybody. Chunk, iconic Sloth, the Fratelli brothers were awesome. I love their bicker between one another whenever they get Chunk, and how the brothers don't like each other. Fratelli brothers. The woman who played off of Throw Mama Off a Train. Yeah, forgot the actress's name.
Oh, what was her name? Yeah.
She was badass in that movie. In this movie, she's iconic. I grew up playing the video game, the Nintendo,
which was a sequel
to it. Supposedly, I love the score to this movie. What's her name? Cyndi Lauper, who did the soundtrack to this, was fucking amazing. It's iconic. It will always be like everybody will always remember it for years.
Mm-hmm.
Like 30 years down the road. I mean, it's been what? It's been 35 years. Yeah, 35 years since this movie came out, and it's still talked about with her soundtrack with this. She did an interview of it not long ago, and I think another 20-something years is still going to be talked about. But yeah, I love the journey they went through. It was good. I mean, well-written movie. It's still... This film, I think I can always watch every day, and it never gets old to me. So, classic. That is definitely a classic. It earned its right.
Yes, I absolutely agree. It's one that I grew up with. I didn't watch... Well, I remember growing up with it when it aired on television when I was a kid, and me and my brother used to watch it a lot of the time, and we had so much fun with it, especially with the whole adventure feel of it, and just the kids, they all were perfect with each other. Great chemistry with all the actors, and the kid from played Short Round from Temple of Doom was also great, and it was also cool seeing Sean Astin in an early role too, playing the lame kid, and I love the whole vibe that they were basically doing like a kid's version, kind of similar of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that's basically what it was Spielberg, obviously being involved. They pretty much they wanted to take that concept, because around when Indiana Jones came out, that kind of theme was like highly praised, and they're like, what would be cool to do with just something you could relate to with kids.
Well,
and not only that, the director actually said it was based loosely off of something he did when he was a child. I think it was him, I think it was the director who said he based it loosely off of whenever he was a kid, and they used to do treasure hunts or something. It was based off of somebody's close story where they were born at, and they thought, I want to do a true movie of this.
And it kind of has like a pirate adventure type.
I really love the pirate theme. I love the setting in Oregon, in Astoria, Oregon. I've been there. It's a beautiful place. It was neat because I've seen some of the locations they shot the movie at. Of course, I have to see one of my favorite all-time films in real life, and I was up in Oregon in 2010, I think it was. It was 2009. And I begged to drive 75 miles out of my way to fucking go see this locations, and it was pretty neat. The whole pirate theme, there's just, I don't know, something about it just... I guess it's a classic. I mean, it was a classic. It was instant when it came out.
Right.
And that movie around my time of when I was born. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
I grew up when it was hyped heavily.
Yeah, because you got to see like a lot earlier than me, because I was you're older than me.
Yeah.
But also, what I also like too is it's also great seeing Josh Brolin in early appearance too. Like, he was quite young in this.
You know what's funny? That being one of my favorite films ever made, I did not know that was Josh Brolin. Like, seriously, it took I didn't learn that for years. I didn't put two and two together. I was like, holy shit, that is Josh Brolin. Because I remember I was reading something and somebody goes, yeah, Goonies, or he was doing some kind of like Goonie thing, and I was like, why would he do that? And then I read it in the story, and then it was talk about the brother of Sean Astin's character. I'm like, hold on here. Holy shit, that's Josh Brolin.
Yeah, Thanos himself playing, the brother.
And of course, Corey Feldman in that movie was awesome with his mouth.
Yeah.
Always talkative and getting them all in fucking trouble and fucking up. Corey Feldman was great in it. He worked well in that. I'm glad he actually turned Friday 13 Part 5 down for that, because that was perfect choice right there.
Yeah, because he
had the choice of F5 or that.
Yeah, and he made the right choice. So yeah, I couldn't get enough for the movie, and while it would be interesting to see a sequel, first of all, I don't really think, like you were saying, it's going to capture much. It would capture much of the magic like the original film had, and plus, unless you're going to get Richard Donner back to try to actually direct the film, or at least have someone that might be on maybe take some cues from him or something. it's just I think it's too late. I think it's definitely
well, like Richard was saying in that interview when they did that little reunion, he was stating that the reason why he don't think they can capture it is because he said that the kids, him, and everybody just about from lowest to low of the people behind sets, they said it was probably the most funnest time a movie he's ever experienced, or Spielberg ever said that everybody just had a blast. Like, there was no tensions like you usually read about movies.
Yeah.
They said it was a fun movie to make.
Yeah.
And because
you
of
can
that,
see it on screen,
it's kind of hard to capture that.
Yeah, it is. So but I still to this day hold it as one of my all-time favorites.
Yep.
So, now another film that to this day I consider one of the most films I go to as far as if I'm in the mood of just a different type of movie that kind of combines comedy and also comic book level, I'm gonna go with The Mask. This is a film that put Jim Carrey on the map the same year that he did Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, and
he had a hell of a year that year.
3 movies in one. So
and they all became iconic.
Yeah, they all became household names for him, and this is a film that I to this day can't get enough of. Like, it's a film that's able to capture not only the comedy that we love from Jim Carrey and him playing a guy that's not quite has that confidence in himself until he basically gets the power by using this mask in the film, and he meets the lovely Cameron Diaz again from There's Something About Mary, and then her first movie too, and just the movie not only holds up with the overall movie itself, but also the visual effects. To this day, they still actually pretty hold up, because what was cool was that behind the scenes, they didn't have to use much as far as using practical effects, because Jim Carrey can basically transform his face into different features.
He's got talent, and that was the right choice to cast him as the Mask.
Yeah, and what he brought to the role was not only iconic, but also every scene with him as the Mask is just so hilarious, and it gives you that kind of upbeat vibe.
Yeah, because I like the whole comic book feel to it, where he's all like it's a comedy comic book.
Yeah,
like the parts where he makes satire of every scene. Like whenever he doesn't want to wake the old lady up, so he goes, and he has an alarm go dee 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 dee. It kind of felt like a Roger Rabbit type thing. Yeah,
and they were kind of going for, because Jim Carrey likes to do that whole goofy vibe of his that he does with Ace Ventura and stuff.
Yeah.
They combine that also with Tex Avery cartoons, because if you notice in the film, he's watching a Tex Avery cartoon with the wolf and everything.
Yeah.
They use that similar element later on in the film when he's watching Cameron Diaz. But also you gotta think too, this was a departure from the comic books that's based on, because the comic books themselves, from what I've heard, they're actually pretty fucking graphic.
Yeah, like it's supposed to be more serious.
It's more darker type of comedy. They still add comedy elements into it, but it's meant to be in that more Deadpool type of vibe, where you're seeing him kill people in different ways, and it becomes across as more brutality.
I like the parts where the cops are onto him and stuff, and all the scenes, the part where they're at the Central Park. I think they're at a park. They weren't in New York, I don't think.
No,
but anyways, yeah, it was. He was. They told him freeze, and he goes. And then that part, he's fucking with them and shit, just doing all kinds of jokes, pulling all kinds of shit out of his pocket. I mean, just so much shit went on with that film. It was downright hilarious. The villain was fucking good in it. He was that one
Peter Green.
Peter Green, yeah. And the part where he gets the hold of the mask, where he's all evil and shit, and and then the dog does his thing where he's
got the mask.
It's all around good comedy.
Yeah, and to this day, I'm not gonna count the fucking piece of shit Son of Mask, because I want to pretend that movie never existed. I would admit,
Ace, Son of Ace,
or the other Dumb and Dumber,
every movie
that did have Jim Carrey.
Every movie that they took and made son of,
or tried to do a sequel about Jim Carrey, and I wish that someday, because they have talked about that if Jim Carrey was to come back and do The Mask, he would do it if they had. I guess it really depends on the script and if they really had a good story to go with.
Well, with him coming back and doing Sonic, remember there's this hiatus where Jim Carrey wanted to take the more serious route.
Yeah.
And he also had personal issues going on. And because of Sonic, I think we might get lucky, and it might have revived him to come back and do shit like that.
Yeah, because
they brought up now, since Sonic, they came up to him for Ace 3 and that. Mask 2.
Yeah, because they were originally going to do a Mask 2 in the 90s, but at the time, because it was after Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls when Jim Carrey would think that because after he did that film, he was against really being in sequels, so he felt like just leaving it alone as just a standalone movie.
Yeah.
And if they were to do a sequel, it would be cool to see him come back, but unfortunately, it would be hard to get Cameron Diaz because she's retired at this point.
Yeah.
So you couldn't probably get her back.
Her career went
After she did
sex tape.
Sex Tape and Annie.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I highly enjoyed this movie a lot, and it's my go-to as far as Jim Carrey films.
So the next film, I'm probably going to get clapped by people on this one because a lot of people said that this was not very good on his filmography, and honestly, I thought not only is this film like made me laugh from beginning to end, I do have it up there on his list as his top 4 or 5 favorite films of his filmography, and that's Zack and Mary Make a Porno. This movie by Kevin Smith is fucking hilarious. This movie had me dying of laughter in the theaters. Holy shit. I can't believe this is hated. I really can't. But anyways, we follow pretty much Seth Rogen's character with
Elizabeth Banks.
Elizabeth Banks. I get her mixed up with Elizabeth Shue. But anyways, yeah, Banks, and pretty much they live together, high school friends, and they are pretty much having a hard time paying their bills. They don't have enough money for anything, so they result to making homemade porno movies, and they start slowly want to do parodies of like movies, and they do the whole Star Wars thing, Star Wars. And then that ruins, and they do the cappuccino thing where they work at the cappuccino shop. But yeah, this movie is fucking hilarious. And not only that, he was able to. This was the last movie since Clerks 2. He was able to get Jeff Anderson back in, and he actually got everybody back in,
including Jason Mewes.
Yeah, he even got some of his old school friends from Clerks to come in and do cameos and shit like that. But yeah, this movie, holy crap, this movie. I couldn't believe the amount of nudity and damn near pornographic shit that they had. That there's no way they could have done that if they weren't really fucking.
Yeah.
Like, this movie was graphic with its pornography. I'm surprised they didn't get it a non-rated, like an R. I mean, really.
Well, from what I heard was that Kevin Smith fought hard to try to release the film, and he did have pressure, I believe, from the MPA, if I recalled, and they were going to originally release it under NC-17.
Yeah.
But and originally,
because I mean, the fuck scenes and the nudity is like some of the most nudity I've seen on
probably
theoretical film.
And it's very similar to like how they did with Boogie Nights on the whole porno in movies and stuff, but also. What also we fought hard to get across to theaters too was the marketing, because the marketing had it to where they couldn't call it Make a Porno, so as you see on the DVD, they had to call it
what
Zack and
happened
Mary.
was this film, when it was being released, had a lot of controversial with like a lot of religious groups and the name, so they had to take the Make a Porno out because a lot of places, a lot of countries around the world. Let's get to the title first. The title was pretty much not liked by majority of countries around the world, so they had to cut it down to Zack and Mary. So that being said, then they were trying to release it, but then a lot of the graphic shit that was in the movie, a lot of like Utah was like a state that said they would not allow this. In fact, I think Utah actually was the only state that banned it. Like, people who lived it, this never came out in Utah. So I remember when this was coming out, it was a big deal on controversial level, but Seth Rogen was hilarious in this. Everybody was freaking hilarious. It was the first Jason Mewes film that you see him with short hair. That was weird to see, but just like all around, like the comedy and like them trying to make a homemade porno and just shit goes wrong, like, and I mean that literally, the part where Jeff gets shit on by a girl that was constipated, she's getting butt fucked, and shit's all over him, and that one guy had made a comment about shit, and he goes, "Don't you ever say shit cake like that again." I mean, just so much shit that they say in this film, like everything from beginning to end just had me fucking floored. It was so funny. I just don't get why this is like considered Kevin Smith's one of his worst movies. I don't agree at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's a film that if it was the last like great film, I will say that Kevin Smith did up until last year when we saw James Silent reboot. Yes. Because at that point his heart where it was, and it was actually, you could say he also took an argument that because behind the scenes when he was working on the film, it was Seth Rogen's idea to get Kevin Smith to smoke weed more, because Kevin Smith flat out said that he basically smokes weed to actually to concentrate more on his movies. So between that movie and Cop Out, you can see the decline where he went in because his mind just wasn't quite there.
And unfortunately, that led to him wanting to do his own dream movies, which we got
the Canadian trilogy.
Canadian trilogy
with Tusk and Yoga Hosers, and the third one that's called Moose Jaws. That was
I will say that Tusk wasn't too bad.
It wasn't too bad. I didn't mind it.
I will say that Yoga Hosers, from what I saw in the most part, holy shit, man, that was rock bottom. That's rock bottom. The fucking fact that movie's considered worse than I don't agree.
Yeah, so yeah, I do still think...
And honestly, it's my top 4 favorites, fifth favorite of his entire film history.
Yeah, and it's definitely one I go to as far as if I'm like wanting to be on a kind of level that's similar, like a comedy version of, say, Boogie Nights. Yeah. This would make it like a good double feature with that movie too. So there you go. All right, now my next movie I'm going to pick out, I'm going to go with a film that, believe it or not, is actually one that it doesn't get quite a lot talked about because it's a film that's, oh shit.
Sorry about that.
It's not one that really talked about as much as far as one of his movies necessarily, but to this day I still hold it as one of my all-time favorite performances from him. And I'm going to go with 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams. This is a film that, believe it or not, when it came out, I didn't really know what it was about, because I kind of thought it was maybe about a guy that's, takes pictures of people and kills them or something. Mm-hmm. That's what I kind of thought. But after really upon seeing it over the years, it's grown on me as one of my, if you want a completely different type of Robin Williams performance that is not only works in a very emotional way, but also a very creepy and very mental unstable. This is definitely one to go to, because in this film he plays a guy that's a very lonely guy working at back in the day when we used to have when you take your photos like Walmart and place like that to develop on actual film. Yeah. He's the lab technician that develops the photographs, and he starts to become obsessed with his family that comes to see him and develops their pictures there. And it's a very good character study that basically makes it to where you really feel for the guy, because he's just trying to try to have a family he never had, and it's
kind of like a more darker version of Cable Guy.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And
instead of movie, but he's addicted to pictures.
Yeah. And then essentially he's going through all this on trying to go out his way, trying to force the family, well, not force, but trying to persuade them to try to like him and everything, to basically be a part of them. Yeah. And it comes to a point where it gets a little too far. I won't spoil what happens, but let's just say that it takes quite a dive toward the later half of the film, to where he starts to kind of lose it. And when you really get to understand where he's actually coming from too, there's hints about that maybe he had possibly a childhood that was very abusive and stuff like that. That calls back to why he kind of became who he was. Yeah. And it really holds as one of my all-time favorite Robin Williams films. And this came out the same year as Insomnia did,
which was another dark movie he did. It was that year he took off from comedies and family-oriented movies and did back-to-back dark movies.
Yeah. And it's sad because to this day I miss Robin Williams a lot, and I really wish he
that was probably the only celebrity death that hit me very, very hard. I don't really I'm not saying I don't care. It's just that one was the one that really bothers me to this day, and still does, because that guy was one of a kind that we'll never see somebody like that again.
Yeah, and it's always good to see actors that are well known for comedian roles and taking more of serious roles, because there are other actors that did that too, including Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler, and when they do start to do serious roles, you can see that it puts them in a great script and a great performance that's very separate what they're usually known for.
Yeah, it's funny, whenever you do that, you get better performances out of well-known people that's known for that genre.
Yeah.
Instead of using somebody that's known for that genre, you take somebody who wants to branch out and do other things, and they come out better.
Like with Adam Sandler and Uncut Gems, and even Jim Carrey when he's done other stuff
Number 23
and... to an extent, the Truman Show and Eternal Sunshine. So there's a lot of films that comedic actors can do if they have the right, director and writer involved that can put a good performance into a serious role, and this really holds that with that. So, yeah. Have you seen?
Yeah,
this one?
I've seen that. In fact, what's funny is you let me borrow that and Insomnia when I first met you because I didn't see both films.
No, I didn't.
Remember?
I didn't have this back when I first met you.
Well, I think no. You let me borrow Insomnia, and I found that on. I
No,
rented
you
that
watched
episode.
both of them on. I never. No, I just recently bought these.
Oh.
So I never had them.
Then I don't even remember.
You probably watched them online or something.
I forgot how I watched both of them, but I remember watching them both back to back. I actually was really late to the party on both these movies. I actually waited until about 2016, 17 to watch them.
Yeah.
It was the first time I ever saw both, and I fucking was blown away by both movies, especially that one. That was really, I was like, why did I wait so long to see this? It was a really good movie, and it really digs deep into the mental illness, like you say, and you feel for him, but he does take it too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Another film, since we're on the biggest topic of mental illness, this is one. It's very occult. It's considered a classic of its own rights, and it's actually a classic among our parents and our grandparents. And this is a film that my parents and my grandparents loved, and they introduced me to it. And I actually truly think it's one of his top 5 best performances of his entire career, and it deals mostly, pretty much, that is about the film, is mental illness. And it is One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicklaus and many other people like. This movie's an old movie. This has got Danny DeVito, and it's got Christopher Lloyd. Even has that dude from Ghost with the dark eyes. I forgot his name.
Sorry. What's his name? Yeah, I know you're talking about. I've seen the guy.
Jack Nicklaus is mainly the main guy, and then the famous Indian from Poltergeist, if you guys remember Poltergeist 2, who tragically passed after that movie. And basically, this is like this movie came out in the 70s, so a lot of those actors we just mentioned were really fucking young in this movie. We follow Jack Nicklaus's character, who he did a crime, and they wanted him tested to see if he's really nuts or can he be fit for trial. So he's put into this insane hospital, and it's a good character study of him and people around him, all his cast, and the shit that they're going through with this evil bitch fucking doctor who's pretty much going beyond her limits. And this is around the time when they were doing the whole lobotomy testings and shit, and catatonic to kind of pretty much silence when they're so fucking nuts. And I really say this is and it had an early performance by Brad Dourif in this film. And he was young as shit in this movie.
He was also nominated for Best Supporting Actor, too.
Yeah, rightfully so. But Jack Nicklaus, as always, gives a really great performance. Everybody did, and you question his sanity. But you also, what I really liked about this movie is he does have sanity somewhat, because he sees these people that he's surrounded by. He feels he doesn't belong there, and he befriends them, and he teaches them things. Teaches them, like, these people have been locked up most of their lives, and he brings the outside world into the hospital, like, letting them, they party, teaching the Indian guy how to play basketball, and teaching Brad Dourif's character, he's always he's always wanted a girlfriend and stuff, and then having fun. There are scenes where they're like partying and shit, and they're doing stuff. And, what was it, like Jack Nicklaus was able to smuggle women in or something like that, and that's where Brad Dourif got a girlfriend and got laid and shit like that. But and it deals with some really heartwarming and some funny stuff. But for the most part, this film is pretty serious. And this doctor right here, she's mean. She's real mean. But this is a classic that will probably be. It's kind of like a Kubrick type thing, where it will be remembered forever. Yes. And I think it's based off a book too.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend this movie. Highly recommend this movie.
Absolutely, I completely agree. This to me is this is my favorite performance of Jack Nicholson, and I think he rightly so because he won the Oscar for it, and not only did he win the Oscar, it won the big five I think of that year for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress for Lisa Fletcher who played Nurse Ratched, and also well no I didn't win the Best Five. It won for them two, and then it won for Best Picture. I think it did, and then I actually read the book of it, and the book of it, from what I've heard, is that it was very close to the book, from what I've heard from a lot of readers, and if I remember correctly, it was very similar as far as the overall plot. The only thing that they really changed as far as the movie was in the book, it's all in the perspective of the Indian. The Indian's telling the story, and in the movie, he's a supporting character. Yeah,
in the movie, he's a supporting character. I'll tell you right now. Not only that, this movie also has like one of the most saddest fucking endings. Like it really hit me. Like whoa, you know.
Yeah, and
it's sad.
It is, and also the not only is it also great,
but there's also other stuff that's sad, like with Brad Dourif's character and all that. It's fucked up.
It is, and but it also has some lighthearted moments that I really enjoyed, like the part where they're going fishing when they get out, and in the because Jack Nicholson. R.P. McMurphy ends up taking the bus that takes the people that aren't confined there at the hospital, and he ends up driving off with it and stuff, and he ends up taking them on a fishing trip, and he picks up that girl that Brad Dourif also meets and everything, and while they're having fun in the down area, they're trying to spy on them and stuff, and then they don't realize the boat's having to have someone's guide it and everything, and then. They come back and they end up catching this big fucking fish or whatever, and
that's what I liked about the movie is Jack Nicholson is there. He's there for a reason.
Because he did a crime of statutory rape.
Statutory rape, but the way he played it off so good that is he really insane when he did it, or is he is he guilty or whatever?
Yeah, because the whole purpose is that basically. He's trying to basically do less time in jail, so that way he can be, around other people, and they're having to treat him to see, if he actually is really insane. And as the movie goes along, he starts doing things that are questionable, but it shows from the doctors that they don't really consider it necessarily insane, as it is just maybe he's psychotic or something.
He's psychotic. Well, what it is, they also notices he plays it off. He's playing it off. To become insane. To look insane so he doesn't have to go to prison.
Yeah.
But I do, and you could tell that because he's normal throughout the movie, because he's sitting there and he's bringing these people who's never saw the light of day some heart, giving them something instead of being confined and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, I do too. And
he's very rebellious in that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It deals with the theme of rebellion.
Yeah, he does a lot of rebellion, and he shows it with Nurse Ratched a lot. And then she's a vindictive fucking doctor. She pisses. That's one of the rare occasions where you hate the villain.
Where you love to hate, because the actress is so great with it.
Yes.
But it's like you can tell you're rooting for McMurphy, and it's like you want him to succeed and try to have the other inmates, or not inmates, the other patients try to stand up to themselves and stuff, and you root for them.
Yep.
And so my next one I'm going to go with is a film that to this day. When people ask me of what one of my favorite all-time movies are, and also a film I relate to the most, I'm going to go with Office Space, a film directed by the creator of Beavis and Butthead, Mike Judge, a film that not only that I relate to in so many levels with, because I work in an office type of area, and I go through a point where sometimes I just want to be basically not giving a shit and just go with the flow on stuff. And this film, it deals with a guy who works at an office job, and it's set in, one day he just decides, because he had enough of it, he decides to go through hypnotherapy, and he gets basically hypnotized to the point where he switches himself off, and he wants to just no longer fucking put up with shit, so he makes his own rules. And then as the movie goes along, everyone, they hire these intern teams that come in to basically do like layoffs for employees and stuff. And they actually agree with a lot of what he's saying and everything, and they give him more of a benefit on stuff.
Basically, it's if you want a movie that is really reminiscent of how the work field is, that is it right
Yeah, because this movie was quite ahead of its time, because this day I've seen a lot of people that have commented on this movie that have said it's basically what it's like working in an office and being stretched out from your job, and just, it has to go through a lot of how the workforce is.
There's a famous line and a famous saying for this film. When I watched this movie when it first came out, it was a comedy. Now, today, it's a fucking documentary.
Yeah.
Because really, Mike Judge, there's a lot of deep things about this film. Most of it has a lot to do with he actually worked in office. A lot of people don't realize that Mike Judge is actually a genius. He actually has a master's degree in physics, chemistry, and I think at one point had job offers from NASA. That's how smart he was.
Wow.
He just... but he worked at some like office thing job, like I guess like right after, and he just thought that life of that style of what he majored in was just boring. And then he went through shit like that. So he just said, "Fuck it, I want to get in entertainment. I like drawing."
Yeah.
So and then that led to Beavis and Butthead, and here we are, My Judge.
Yeah, but what I also love too about this is that, I mean, I haven't come across like, you know. Because I haven't really like had a point where, you know, I have dealt with like bosses that are on the same level, but just the performances in this are very not only funny as shit, especially with Gary Cole, who plays the main boss, Lundberg, yeah, and it just he says,
you do that, that'd be great. And this movie also spawns the most like not the most, but up there with a lot of the most like repeatable memes and shit.
Yeah.
Where you see Lumberg is used a lot in memes.
Right.
And stuff. So there's a lot of iconic shit that people use from that. Not to mention Office actually got its show from this.
Yeah, The Office.
Office.
I think also both the British TV series and the American TV series had a lot of influence on this movie.
They did. Both the British and the American one. Yep.
Yeah. And also it was cool seeing Jennifer Anderson kind of, you know, take off of her film career while she was doing Friends. And this is definitely one of my go-tos as far as when I think of movies of her.
A little known fact is she plays a waitress who don't like her job, and her boss happens to be Mike Judge.
Yeah.
And you could tell because of his voice. He has that natural, like, butthead voice. You can hear it, but a lot of people didn't know that. And yeah, it was pretty good. But yeah, like you said, it's a lot of the office life. You worked office life.
I do,
so
yeah.
You know what it's like.
I do, and it's just also a film that it's got a rewatchability to it because it was also kind of doing the whole thing with the whole Y2K kind of spiel that was going on because we had movies in the late 90s that were trying to do the whole technology and stuff. And there's a plot point they bring up about trying to invent some kind of virus for the year 2000 and stuff that would basically wipe out everything and for computers or something like that. And what it is that they would basically the company would start to slowly lose money with this virus that they have, and then when they put the virus in that's installed by one of Peter's friends, he realized that they took too much. They basically lost thousands of dollars or millions of dollars out of the company, and they basically they're worried about going to fucking prison.
And you know what's funny is when they bring those financial advisors in to kind of like take over the company to help them as far as money wise, and those people don't know shit about the company, but they take somewhat control, can relate to my girlfriend and how her old job they were doing that. Where they were doing the same thing where, you know, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about and stuff. You know the part where those two guys come in there interviewing who's more important to the company, and then like the ones who really don't give a fuck, they're cool about, and the ones who give a fuck get like thrown out and shit.
Yeah, like the guy, because they had that running joke with the guy, the friend that does the virus named Michael Bolton.
Yeah.
He's like, are you related to that singer guy?
Everybody's
like, no,
with him.
that's a coincidence.
I also like the part where Lumberg, he fucks with Milton hard in this movie. And that part where he's put into the basement, and you remember in the movie, he's not allowed to have cake. He keeps missing the time to have cake. And like that's where Lumberg comes in the basement like you don't know he's there. You put him there. Oh, hey, Milton. If you can deal with the cockroach problem,
that'd be great. Could you, could you try to get out all these cockroaches out here? That would be terrific.
Yeah.
And
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, because I like how he says, "Hey, Peter, what's happening? I'm gonna need you to come in on this coming Saturday."
We can all relate to that. Yeah, our bosses are ducking and dodging, trying to get out, and like, hey, there you are. Come here. You got to work this week. You know, we've all been in those shoes. That's why Mike Judge is a fucking genius, because the guy, pretty much everything he's made from Idiocracy is ahead of its time. saying that in 20, 30 years, 100 years, 500 years, whatever, is we're going to get dumb as the years go. And that is true. We're de-evolving ourselves as far as our fucking using our head. So he's right on that. And he lived the work life, did that. He based Beavis and Butthead off not only the Peanuts, but the people who were in the show was based off the people he's lived next to and around. He went to school with the guy that talked like Butthead. He went around. He had a friend that laughed like Beavis. His neighbors was the stereotypical veteran that lived in New Mexico and Texas, Mr. Anderson. So everything is based off of experience, and I think that's what made Mike Judge so fucking profound as a writer and director.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend it, and to this day it holds as one of my go-tos as far as my relatability and everything I work with. So we're gonna take a break for now, and we'll come back with another part 3 in our discussion of random movies on my DVDs I own. So we'll see you here in our next one.
Later.